Hey everybody, I'm so glad I'm here. I'm Jeff Blankenburg, and today I'm here to talk about Alexa. So we're going to get right into it because I'm going to try and pack 90 minutes of content into these 25. So what we're going to talk about today is building your first Alexa skill. And for those of you that haven't done it, I want to spend just a quick minute before we get into some code talking about what that really means. So I'm Jeff Blankenburg. If you want to find out more about this stuff, I stream all the time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We'll get past all that stuff. What is an Alexa skill? An Alexa skill is basically like an app you think about running on a mobile phone, but you run it with your voice on one of those devices that responds to that name that I'll try not to say very much of. So how do they work? How does as we think about being developers, how does this stuff really all come together? So the first thing I want to talk about is a skill. So there's hundreds of thousands of them at this point, and lots of cool things you can do. You can play Jeopardy, you can order an Uber, you can listen to your Audible books, lots of things that you can do, and they're all built by developers like us. So how do they work? Well, if you look on the left-hand side, we have a person, and that person talks to their device, right? They talk to the Echo that they have sitting around the house. What happens with that is when you say that wake word, Alexa, or whatever else it might happen to be, you then start the device recording, and it records the audio that you say, and it passes that audio file off to the Alexa cloud. There you can see I have speech recognition, I have machine learning, I have natural language understanding. All of those things happen to my audio file. So we turn the audio file into speech. We use something called phonemes to translate that stuff down into speech. There's a lot of very cool machine learning behind that. And then finally we get into natural language understanding. And the best way I like to explain this, we all have a natural language understanding engine in our own minds. If you've ever been in a relationship, you've used it. Someone said something, or maybe you said something and you didn't exactly mean the words that you said. That's natural language understanding. It allows Alexa to be able to figure out what is it that they're really trying to accomplish, what is it they're really trying to do. And the way that that happens is through something we call intents. And so I want to tell you just quickly about what intents are, because this is the one thing that I want to make sure you really understand as this works. So I want you to picture a DVD player. On a DVD player, there are buttons on the front of it, right? There might be a play, pause, stop, rewind, fast forward. All of those buttons are intents for your DVD player. So now I want you to imagine you have a voice-enabled DVD player. And with that voice-enabled DVD player, you can say things like, it's showtime, or start the movie, or whatever, right? There was a lot of good things to talk about movies just a moment ago. And with all of those things, you want to be able to say whatever you feel like saying, and you want the device to understand you. So those are our intents. We only expect the DVD player to be able to play and pause and rewind and stop, maybe eject. But in those cases, we would never expect our DVD player to order us a pizza or check our bank balance. And so when we think about the scope of the DVD player, we think about the intents that are really appropriate for that specific case. The same thing happens with skills. So back to our picture, the natural language understanding engine tries to compare what the user said to all the intents that you have available inside of your application. Once it's identified one of those, it creates a really nice JSON request document that gets passed off to your service, which is what we're going to dig into in just a second. And that service, your code, can do whatever you want at that point. If you need to call a database, or you need to call some APIs, or whatever it happens to be, you can go out and do those things from the language of your choice, from the server of your choice, and we'll cover all that in a minute as well. But then it has to respond back to Alexa with a very specific JSON format that says, hey, say this to the user next. And that response gets passed back through the cloud. It turns your text into speech in her voice. And then that's passed back to the user in two ways, actually. There's visuals. We have devices like the ones behind me that have screens on them. You can do a lot of visual interactions with the users, but you can also obviously respond just with voice, and that's the audio side of things. So that's the quick look at slides. But what I really wanted to do was get into building some stuff. Let's talk about how we actually build something. So this is my browser. I'm at developer.amazon.com, and anybody can go here. This is free to use. Everything I'm going to show you, by the way, is free. And you can go in and build your own Alexa skills in this portal. So again, it's developer.amazon.com. I have some links later at the end. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this from the browser because it's easy to visualize how this stuff works. But I will show you later from my console how we can do all this stuff as well. So I'm going to create a skill. And in doing so, I'm offered a couple choices. So I'm going to call this Live Coders. I think that's probably a good name for today. And I'm going to do it in English, but you can see that I have a good number of languages that I can choose from. We'll use US English today. And then I have a choice of a model. So do I want a flash briefing or a smart home skill or a music skill? These are all different choices, and all of them outside of the custom, the one that's selected, they're all kind of pre-built models for pre-built purposes, right? A music skill, we know how to interact with music. For a meeting skill, this is going to be things like start my meeting or book a room or things like that. Flash briefing, if you haven't used that before, you can say, Alexa, start my flash briefing. I just set someone's off. I apologize for that. But what this does is you get to curate a list of things that you want, your news, your weather, your sports, whatever it might be, and it'll play those things for you as part of your flash briefing. So you can build a flash briefing skill and let people consume your content that way too. We're going to talk about a custom skill though, which is what 99% of you will ever build. And you can see that I have 3 options for what my back end looks like. I could build an Alexa-hosted skill using Node.js, that's what we're going to do today, but you could also use an Alexa-hosted skill called Python, or you could provision your own. Provisioning your own just means you're going to set up your own server, or a Lambda function, or some serverless thing somewhere, and you're going to do it however you want to. All you have to do is have an HTTPS connection and be able to consume and send JSON. That's really about the only requirement you have. So if you have an old dusty server under your desk and that's the thing you want to use, as long as you meet those requirements, it's fine. But what I want to talk about is the Alexa hosted, because I think these are pretty cool. These are actually provisioning a bunch of AWS resources for you, including a Lambda, a DynamoDB, an S3 bucket. There's lots of things there for you. And it's all set up for you for free. So you don't even have to create an AWS account or provision any of those things or worry about them charging you anything for them. They're Alexa hosted. So I'm going to use that today because I don't want to incur any costs. So we'll choose that, and up at the top here, I'm going to hit create my skill. Now what this is actually doing as we wait here is it's starting to think about what are all the things that I'm going to need to create for this skill. The last step that I get to make is what do I want the template that I start with to be? I'm going to use the Hello World skill, but you can see that we have things for recipes or for fact skills or quiz games. These are all just starter templates, and these are all in our GitHub repo as well if you'd like to check them out. But I'll just use Hello World for now. So this is where it's actually creating that Lambda function for me. It's creating an S3 bucket to store any files that I may need. It's creating the interaction model, which is the thing that contains all of my intents that we have inside of a skill. So all of that stuff is happening. It usually, like it says, it takes about a minute to create all of this stuff. But what I want to show you, there's a thing I like to show when people are building their first skill. And the idea behind it is how fast can I get you from starting to hearing Alexa say the words that you typed in your code or wherever it might be. And so I'm going to rapidly try to get us there, and then I'll take a step back and show you how the pieces fit together. So as soon as our build happens here, like I said, it's about 60 seconds to get all of those provisioned and ready to go. And I'm trying to talk long enough for this to happen. My apologies. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to shut down a few of these alerts here, and what I want to show you is that on the left-hand side, I have a list of intents. Let me blow that up a little for you. So I have a list of intents. You can see I have a Hello World intent, but I also have a few others. And let me talk about those quickly. So we have a cancel intent, a help intent, stop intent, and a navigate home intent. These are built-in Amazon intents that are included in every single skill. So you have to imagine, no matter who the user is, no matter what the skill is, everyone should be able to say stop and have it stop working. They should be able to say help and have it offer them some help about what they might be trying to do. And that's one of the real tricks with voice, is that you have to be able to provide contextual help for users because they don't have a UI, they don't have anything that can show them what they're supposed to do, they can only talk to it. And so help is a really important piece of that as well. Oftentimes stop and cancel can be used together, but there may be times where you build a skill where you want to cancel the choice but not stop the skill. And so that's why those are both here, but you can use them for whatever makes sense for the user in that context. But the one we're really going to focus in on is this Hello World intent. So I'm going to open this up, and what you can see in here is I have a bunch of utterances here. Hello, how are you? Say hi world. These are built-in utterances. Imagine the things a user might say to my skill. It's not a master list. I find as developers we often think, oh, I have to come up with every possible way someone might say that. You don't. This is where the magic of machine learning comes in. We can give it a good representative list. I usually say 7 to 10 things is a good sample. More is fine, but if you find yourself writing 100 of these, you probably went too far. And with these things, these are the things that Alexa is going to build a model around to say, when a user says something like this, they mean they want to do whatever the Hello World intent means. And so in this case, I'm also going to add some names to this. So we'll add Jeff Fritz. We'll add Sarah Dukevich, which are a couple of the speakers we've had today. And so we'll add those in there so you can see that those things actually respond the same way. So those are our intents. The other thing that we have to look at is our code. So I'm going to save and build my model. This is what builds that interaction model, all of that machine learning. It's building all those resources for me. But while we're waiting for that, I'm going to jump into the code so that we can look at that as well. Inside my code, this is just plain vanilla Node.js. There's nothing terribly fancy about this. I'm going to start at the bottom to show you that there is an exports handler statement here, and what we're doing is calling out to the Alexa SDK and loading in our launch handler, our hello world handler. You can see we basically have a handler for each one of those types of intents we have. Up here at the top, you can see that these individual chunks of code, like this one, are my individual handlers. So the way that this works is it moves through that list in the order that they're presented, the launch request handler being first, and it uses this can handle function to be able to say, is this true? Is this actually a launch request? And if it is, then we're going to go ahead and do whatever happens to be in this handle function. So this is how, over and over and over, we just build out a set of handlers for the different intents that we have in our skill. And then once we've done that, we can handle the individual interactions that happen for each one. So let me show you how this actually works. I'm going to go to test. I don't think I made any changes, but I'll save anyway. Let's go to our test tab, and I can show you how this works. The first thing that I want to do is set it to development. This allows me to actually do any testing against my skill. And there was one more thing that I forgot to mention, but I'm going to go back and change right now. And that's in our build tab. We need to tell our skill what its name is. So by default, because I used a template, there's this invocation tab here, and the default name we give it is change me. We want you to change this name. This doesn't make sense to have it be change me or even hello world. So I'm going to call this live coders. So we'll save this and build one more time. I was supposed to do that before. And then we'll run back to our test tab. Well, no, we'll just go right to the test to get to show how this stuff works. So once we're here, we should be able to say things like open live coders. Right? Now I'm waiting for that build to finish because it doesn't know what this name is yet, and if I hit this, it probably won't know what to do. It says, okay, here's Xbox, right? It's trying its best to match up with what I asked it to do. Because this is actually an Alexa interface. So I could say, what is the weather in Seattle? And you can see that I'm getting the response from the skill, and it tells me what Alexa would have said. But now that my build has happened, I should be able to say, open live coders. Or not. Maybe we won't have that happen. Start live coders. And now I've trained it to go the wrong way. That's not actually true. I don't actually know why that isn't happening, but that's the price of live demos sometimes. Let me check that name just to make sure that I didn't screw that up. Invocation, live coders, all of that looks very good. That's a curious development. Open live coders. There we go. I don't know why that happened the first time, but here we are. So now I say welcome. You can say hello or help. Which would you like to try? And if you'll remember, we had a hello world intent, and this is where we allowed ourselves to say hi or say hello. But I added two names to that as well. So what if I say Jeff Fritz? You can see that it says hello world because what happened, if we scroll down here a little, this is the JSON document that was sent into my file. We're going to skip past most of it. I just want to show you what's at the bottom. You can see that this is an intent request. The intent that we hit is hello world intent. And the reason that it knows that is because I said Jeff Fritz. So you can see how this AI, the cloud that's happening there as part of Alexa, is able to take the words that I said, translate them to a specific intent, and then allow me to take that exactly where I want to go. So we can build this on a much more robust level. Let me show you something that's a little bigger. And that is a skill that I'm building right now called Alexa Dev Tips. So in here, this is a skill built for people that want to build Alexa skills. It's a little meta in that way. And the cool stuff about this is that it'll do things like give you answers to things. So you can see, tell me about persistence, or tell me about selling things in my skill. We also have the ability to change voices. So in here you can say change the voice to whatever, and there's a bunch of voice names that you can change things to. I'll demo it on a real device here in just a moment. You can ask about the news, you can ask about things we call speech cons, or sound effects. These are all things that I've built custom intents for with custom custom utterances, and those utterances are like, give me the news, or what's happening, or what are the headlines, right? We're trying to think about the ways that people might actually ask for these things. Okay, so we have a much bigger skill here, but let's look at what this looks like in code. Well, one of the things that we can do, there's a Alexa CLI that we can use, and so one of the examples I want to show you is how we can get that Live Coders app, the thing we just built. How do we get that down to our machine? So what I can do here is say ask clone, and what this will allow me to do, I'm sorry, what? It's just going to be a demo day, I guess. All right, well, let's do ask new, and I'll show you how this works from here. I'm going to choose Node.js. I'm going to choose Alexa hosted skills again. I'm going to give my skill name Live Coders again. And the folder I want, that's fine. Live Coders again is great. And it's going ahead and it's doing that same thing that we were doing before, right? It's building all of the files, but it's deploying them all here locally. What this allows me to do is work in the IDE that I want, use the tools and the technologies that I like here locally on my machine, and then when I'm done, I can type ask deploy, and it'll push all those changes up to the dev portal for me. So when I want to deploy it or I want to push it to certification, all of those things are very, very simple to do. So let's take a look at the code for this actual dev tips skill. You can see that this gets a little more complicated as I bring this out, but I've broken this down into a number of files. But in here you can see that I have an achievement intent handler. This starts to get a little more robust as we start building things out. We have a lot of different functions and things that are available, and all of these are different intents that we've identified in our skill that our user might want to do. So let me show you how a couple of these work. Alexa, open dev tips.
Welcome. What would you like to know?
Who is Blankenburg?
You used the answer intent. I think you asked me about Jeff Blankenburg. Jeff Blankenburg is an Alexa evangelist at Amazon. You can find him on Twitter, Twitch, and GitHub as @Jeff Blankenburg. What would you like to know?
Tell me about persistence.
I think you asked me about persistence. Saving your user's data between sessions can be done with AWS DynamoDB or any other database you choose.
Alexa,
what should we do?
Change the voice to Brian.
You changed the voice to Brian. Hello, my name is Brian. I will use this voice until you change it again. What would you like to try?
Alexa, change the voice to Joanna.
You changed the voice to Joanna. I am now using the voice of Joanna. What should we do now?
Change the voice to Alexa.
You changed the voice back to Alexa. I will now use Alexa as my voice. What would you like to know?
Say Bazinga.
You used the SpeechCon intent. Bazinga. What would you like to know?
Okay, so that's a quick little example of how that skill works. You can see that we have things like...
Here's something I haven't told you about yet.
Alexa,
undefined, what would you like?
You can see here that I have my list of intents.
It's been real.
Almost there. Okay, so you can see that I have my launch request, I have my answer intent, my get news intent, and in each of these cases, these are specific things that our user wants to do. I also have things for like APL templates. This is an entire language called the Alexa Presentation Language that's meant to design interfaces for Alexa devices like that one to be able to put buttons and
devices
lists and...
match two different topics.
Alexa,
did you want...
Stop.
Excuse me. I have to go. Somewhere, there is a crime that needs justice.
She is a delight, but sometimes you don't want to talk, you know? So an APL template is something that you can build to be able to put things on the screen. I have speech cons, which is when she said Bazinga. That's a good example of that. But all of these things are different interactions, and what it does is it creates a new code path for us to go down, whether that's to say speech cons or to hear sound effects or to change the voice like I did there for a little while. So the last thing that I think I have time to show you here is that there's a bunch of other things that we can do in here. You can see that I have, for my voice, as an example, when I say change the voice, what I'm actually saying is I want you to choose one of these things from what we call a slot. So inside my utterances, you could see, let's use the change voice intent. You can see that I'm defining these slots like voice right here. So instead of having to build out a bunch of utterances for all the possible names of voices that I might want to use, instead I can just define a slot and say, hey, pick one, use one of those values. I don't want to say pick, that's the wrong thing to say. But if we come into the voice list here, this is the voice slot itself, you can see that I have all of the names of all of the voices that are available. Amy, Brian, Emma, Ivy, Joanna, Joey, and on and on. So what happens inside my code is when I get the response, when I get that request, which we can look at in testing, what I get is not only the intent that the user wants to provide, that wants to interact with, but they also give me the information about what they might have said. So if I say open dev tips, like this, great, we got, what would you like to try? If I say change the voice to Brian, it's going to say, okay, great, now you can use Brian as my voice. So let me show you the output that we have here and what we actually get in our code, in our JSON, to interact with. So you can see here that it's an intent request. The intent that I used was the change voice intent, which makes sense. But then I also have this slot called voice, which is the name that we saw there in the dev portal a moment ago. And the value that I received was Brian. So this all on its own is good, right? I got the word Brian, and now I understand that I can use that value as something that the user said. But the trick with this is that people can say so many different things. And for names, it's probably pretty cut and dried. But think about the answers that I have when I say, tell me about persistence. What if I said, tell me about databases? How would I know to still go look up the right value for databases or whatever it might be? So that's where we get into resolutions. And this is a technology called entity resolution, which basically shows me the things that have resolved against the words the user said. And so what I can do is say, hey, there's a bunch of synonyms for persistence, for example. And in persistence, I have persistence and database and save information and all the other things that I think someone might say. And so if you match any of those, not only do I get to see what you said, which is this word here, but I also get to see exactly what it resolved to so that I can use this as well as that ID. That's actually my unique ID from my database. I can make one quick call to my database, get all the information back that I need, and I am off and running. So with that, I want to say thank you all. There's a bunch of resources here for you to check out. The twitch.tv / Amazon Alexa. There's a team of 6 of us at Amazon that are streaming there every week. It's about 10 hours. We have a huge GitHub repository with lots and lots of sample code and that Twitch channel. So please check it out. If you build something, tell me about it. I'd love to see what you're building. We'd love to help make it awesome. And I can't wait to see what you build. So thank you guys all for tuning in.